Hey, folks, good morning and welcome to another episode of Steelers Morning Rush. I'm Alan Saunders. It is Thursday, May 1st. We are talking about rookie quarterback Will Howard of the Pittsburgh Steelers today, and a good comment from yesterday's great episode of Steelers Afternoon Rush with Spencer Holbrook from 11 Warriors, covers Ohio State. If you haven't seen that yet, please go back, check it out. Should be one video or audio feed here up on the channel. If you're on YouTube or if you're on a podcast feed, one up on the feed there. Spencer was awesome talking about Will Howard and Jack Sawyer. This was a comment from yesterday's episode from Jeff Hewitt, who says, you have to throw Howard to the Wolves his rookie season because next year's draft is loaded with quarterbacks. Everyone wants a QB1 next year. Doesn't leave much time for Will to make a statement. So I want to address the idea that the Steelers should feel like they have to play Will Howard in 2025 or they won't be able to draft a quarterback in 2026, which I don't think is correct reasoning for a number of reasons. Let's start with one. Obviously, we're not talking about the scenario where Will Howard just goes out there and wins the job, okay? Like, he just goes out there at training camp and is better than Mason Rudolph and is better than Aaron Rodgers, who, by the way, I am still fairly certain is coming. If he goes out there and he's the best quarterback, then he's the best quarterback. You play it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the idea that they should play him not because he's the best quarterback, but because they have to see what they have in him before they draft a quarterback in 2026 or decide whether or not they want to draft a quarterback in 2026. And that is just, that's not the case. They do not need to do that. They can not see a single snap from Will Howard this season, and they can still draft a quarterback in 2026, and that's fine. The assumption should be that most of your quarterbacks are not going to work out. Even if you have the first overall pick, your hit rate on a quarterback is barely 50-50. If you're drafting someone in the 6th round, your assumption should be that he's no good. Maybe he turns out to be good, and you don't want to take away the opportunity for him to be good, but you should not be operating under the assumption that you have something in a 6th round draft pick. You should be operating under the assumption that he stinks. I don't think he does. I don't think he's going to. I think it's a very good pick. I'm just saying that is the proper way to look at the position from a general manager's perspective. You drafted a quarterback in the 6th round. That means absolutely nothing about whether you should draft a quarterback in the 1st round the next year or not. If Howard turns out to be good, they'll figure it out. Kirk Cousins, one of the better late round quarterbacks of the last 2 decades, played one game as a rookie, and it wasn't because they wanted to see him. It was because somebody else was hurt. I assume it was RG3. I don't know. I don't remember the 2012 Washington Redskins that well. He did not become a starting quarterback until his 4th season in the league. Brock Purdy, the other late round quarterback success story of recent memory, only started because 3 other quarterbacks got hurt. It's not like the 49ers were like, oh my gosh, we got to see Brock Purdy. It just happened and they had to play him and he turned out to be pretty good. You just keep firing at that position, especially when you're talking about low percentage chances like a 6th round pick. So if Will Howard wins the job, the Steelers absolutely shouldn't hold him back. And the Steelers should definitely give him an opportunity to show what he can do. I mean, it's a great opportunity because if his other quarterbacks in the room with him are Aaron Rodgers and Mason Rudolph, it's not like those guys need reps. I mean, Rodgers will need some reps with new receivers, but I mean, he don't want to throw that much. He's 42. He certainly ain't going to want to play in preseason. So you'll have a lot of opportunities for Will Howard to show what he can do. There's zero need to force it. Also, like, it's just not what's the best thing for Will Howard's development. We saw Will Howard transfer from Kansas State to Ohio State, and obviously because of the college football dynamic, he had to play right away. And you'll look at the player that Will Howard was at the beginning of the year, and it wasn't very good. We talked about this with Spencer yesterday. I'm not saying it was awful, but it wasn't like going to get him drafted. And then he got a lot better as the season went on. Well, I mean, if you hadn't thrown him to the Wolves, and if you had the ability to give him the grace of a longer runway, how much better would he have looked from the beginning? You know, the Steelers don't need Will Howard right now. They have They have Will Howard at home. Mason Rudolph is basically the same quarterback. So they can let him develop at his own rate. Tell them if and when he's ready to play by the way he plays in the preseason, the way he practices. Like if Will Howard starts a game this year, probably some bad stuff happened. And that's not a bad thing for Will Howard or his prospects of becoming the Steelers starting quarterback. That's the way it goes. So, yeah, I mean, drafting Will Howard has no impact on the Steelers' ability to draft a quarterback in 26 or their willingness to. Certainly, they have high hopes for him. They wouldn't have drafted him if they didn't like him. But those hopes have to be realistic. And realistic is there have been 2 quarterbacks drafted in the third day of the draft since 2010 that turned out to be good starting quarterbacks in the league. So probably not very good odds. Sure, they're going to give him a chance and they're going to see things through, but that's not going to stop them from drafting a quarterback early in 26, nor should it. And you don't need to see him to know that. In fact, you may get the wrong impression about Will Howard if you force it, right? If Ohio State operated this way and said, "Oh, we got to see Will Howard right away," and then they played him the first 6 games of the year, and they were like, you know what? Never mind. He's not that good. I'm sure Ohio State has some 5-star down the quarterback depth chart that they could have, the shiny new thing, Julian Sayin, or I don't know who else on their roster, but that would be the big one. I'm sure they could have. They just play him. In fact, I know there were Ohio State fans in the early part of the last season that wanted them to do exactly that. And if they would have done that, they'd have missed out on getting the Will Howard that they got at the end of the year. So forcing it before it's earned is not going to show you what you want to see anyway. All you're doing if you do that is just sealing his fate, right? If you say, we got to see Will Howard, so we're going to play him before he's ready, what you're going to see is a Will Howard that is going to cause you to rule out Will Howard. Just let him tell you when he's ready, play him when he is, and then figure it out. If you draft a quarterback in 26 and Will Howard turns out to be better, that's fine. You think the 49ers are over there cutting their nails over drafting Trey Lance? No, because they got Brock Purdy, and it didn't matter. Just get the quarterback. Figure all the rest of it out. You can't take multiple chances with first-round picks, right? Because you're hurting your team's ability to compete in other areas by doing that. But you can take all the 6th-round pick swings you want, and that doesn't stop you from doing anything else you're doing. So I think the Steelers should give Will Howard every opportunity this offseason to show what he has. If he earns a role, great. If he doesn't, don't force it. And none of that should impact. Now, like if let's say the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers decides to, get really into smoked meat and he's just going to retire to Green Bay and open up a butcher house or something. And then, Steelers go out there in training camp and Mason Rudolph pulls his hamstring. Will Howard's got to start the first week of the season. He starts to look good and he just never gives the job up. Great. Okay. Now you don't need to draft a quarterback in 26. But there's no reason to force it unless it looks like it's ready to happen, either because it has to happen or because he looks like he's earned the right for it to happen. The idea that Will Howard could go out there and outplay Mason Rudolph is not far-fetched. It's not impossible. We've talked a lot about how similar they are. So I don't think that's impossible, but it'd be pretty hard for me to see him beating out Aaron Rodgers at this stage in their respective careers. All right, that's all we got for this morning. Another great episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive coming up with me and Smitty, including another guest, this one talking about Derek Harmon. We have James Crepea. I believe I pronounced that right, from the Oregonian. I'll get it right this afternoon. So make sure you stay tuned for that, just about 6. And like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube platform. Until then, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, enjoy.